All right, welcome everyone. We will give everyone a few seconds to log on. We are so pleased to have so many folks tuning in with Fairy Godboss and Tinshay today as we talk about mastering management advice for first-time managers. My name is Mary and I am part of the Fairy Godboss team. For those of you who don't know, Fairy Godboss is the largest career community for women. We are a free resource for women to get community advice, read career-related content, connect with other women, apply for jobs, and also get the inside scoop about companies before you apply to those jobs. We are so excited to be partnering with our friends at Tinshay, which is a startup dedicated to advancing gender diversity through executive coaching, one female leader at a time. And as part of this webinar, everyone who logs on today will have 2 lucky participants eligible to win a free 30-minute coaching session from Tinshay. And we'll also be sharing the Tinshay Career Roadmap with you after this webinar. We'll also be recording this webinar, so you'll have access to it afterward. We'll be sending it out via email, as well as how you can stay in touch with Fairy Godboss and Tinshay. We are so excited to have Mary Burns with us today. She is an MBA career coach at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University and an executive coach at Tinshay. Mary specializes in guiding first-time managers and how to effectively make the shift from an individual contributor to successful manager. I know I am excited to hearing her tips and tricks, and so without further ado, I will hand it over to Mary.
Great, thank you, Mary. See, common names, traditional names are still popular. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be on the line with you today. I'm also going to mute my video in just a moment as well, but did want to say hello and shout out to everyone. I hope you're all well, and 2019 has been a very good year so far. And like Mary, I also thank you for joining Tinshay and me today with our special lunch seminar about mastering management and advice for first-time managers. I really love the start of a new year, and I think it's a great opportunity to pause, to assess, and to determine what you want to do this year, what you want to tackle now over the next 11 months or so, because January is practically over. And for many, goals related to professional development are really front and center as you start a new year. I hear that a lot in my private work and in my work at the Kellogg School. So my aim today, really very broadly, is to help many of you achieve your goals for 2019. And I'm glad to get started with the with our presentation today. So without further ado, let's get started. As a Tinshay executive coach, and again in my role at Kellogg, I often hear about aspirations for management, especially people management. People want to get in and manage. They want to lead. And as exciting as it is, and it might be to take that step in your career, it's really important to go in with your eyes wide open to know what it means to be a strong, successful manager. And so our program today covers just that. And I share the objectives here on this next slide about what I hope you will take away from this session. Understanding some key concepts essential for new managers, gain some awareness around personal leadership and communication styles. Know that managing also can come with some challenges, and to know what those warning signs are and where people have struggled as new managers and leaders. I'd like to generate some discussion with all of you for a shared learning experience with people on the line today, and then provide some additional support and resources for you. So I've got a number of tools that are worthwhile for you to take advantage of as your schedules allow. And then I thank you again to Mary Ferris. I share my brief bio here with you, and just highlight that really I come at our conversation today with my industry and my coach experiences as really the lens that I think about as new managers. I promoted some, I hired others. In my agency work for many years, did the same when I worked at Loyola for about 6 years in a management role in the School of Business. And you can see the kinds of things that I've been involved with. Management Leadership for Tomorrow, a wonderful nonprofit, was in New York, now in Washington, D.C. and things. And in the spirit of our wonderful Tenchi founder, Maggie is very big on superpowers. And when she asked me mine a couple of years ago, I told her pretty quickly what that was, and that is supporting your generation, millennials, and helping them to thrive and to navigate their careers in a pretty complex business world, a fast-paced, dynamic world, but one that has really got this multi-generational workforce going on, and what that means, how it can help or sometimes hinder your career. So I really love working with your audience. I believe most on the call might be within this, 25 to 35 or 40 range, somewhere in there. If you're not, that's okay too. But your audience has really been the core of my coaching work over the last dozen years or so. And so that is my superpower, and a little bit about me. So without further, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. And that is, the excitement, again, for those of you on the call who've been recently promoted or maybe promoted soon, it's very exciting that you've been promoted, but now what does it mean to be, a new manager? We'll talk a little bit about leadership, communication styles, including managing virtually. So some of you might be doing that. Some might be effective. I'll give you some tips on being even more effective. We'll talk a little bit about managing versus coaching briefly. There is a substantial difference to this, and I want to share with you what that distinction is. Coaching is a common management term that is used. A lot of companies are using coaching interchangeably, but it is not synonymous with managing. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. Then we'll talk a little bit about, again, expanding your scope. Your job now as a manager is about not only managing down to your direct reports and keeping an eye there, but also remaining effective, managing up to your boss, sometimes your boss's boss, and others at a senior level. So there's a bigger scope of and perspective that you need to bring to your management position. Talk a little bit about some warning signs and some struggles, as well as one of them being about managing friends and what that's about, and to keep an eye on that. And then finally, we will have time on the back end of our time today to talk and go through some Q&A. So I've allocated about 15 minutes or so for that. And I would thoughtfully ask you to just hang on to your questions until then, just so I can get you through the content that I want to share with you, and these important tips. So with that, let's talk about what happens when you've been promoted. And the starting point is that it will be really important to shift your thinking and your behavior. To have a change in your working style means making that mental shift. You're taking on expanded responsibilities. That's the first kind of mental, intellectual shift that you're making, and getting your arms around a wider scope of work. All right. Your strengths, the talents and accomplishments that got you to the promotion is really not always the things that are going to make you effective as a leader. And again, I want to reinforce that. There's actually a book about this. What got you here won't keep you there, or won't keep you here. It's a wonderful management book. So your talents, strengths, your skills, what got you there as an independent contributor that got you noticed, got you promoted, is not necessarily going to be the foundation or the anchor of what's going to get you your next promotion. You're going to be developing even more. Okay. Now you're managing other individuals and a team much more holistically. You're managing one direct report, a team of 5, however that might be, however many that might be. You're also, again, remembering to manage up and being effective with those people above you. So, and you're exposed to, I encourage you to adapt and think more about an overall management perspective, because you are now in a management role probably going to be exposed to much more than you were as an individual contributor. That might be, again, in managing your direct reports. It might be, managing finances, being exposed to things from your boss that you didn't have exposure to earlier. And so, again, this is widening your scope. This is what it means to be shifting your thinking and your behavior, tapping into new skills, developing new competencies and skills that are important at the manager level. I'll show you what those are in just a few slides. All right. An effective manager is also someone that really sits at the center of these 4 topics. And early on, I think it's really going to be very important for you to build credibility with whoever you're managing. Again, could be 1, could be a team of 10, could be with you right there in your physical space. 4 or 5 could be remote, but you need to build credibility with all of them. And really, what is credibility? Oftentimes it's simply, doing what you say you're going to do, leading by example, following through with your team on things that are really essential to them getting their work done, keeping them informed of rapid change, unexpected changes from your boss. So that's a little bit about building your credibility. Another thing that you need to do in your new management role is get to know those people on your team and what their capabilities are, what their strengths are, what they bring to the group. You really might not have been as tuned into them earlier if you were a peer of theirs, if you were part of the group and then were promoted as new team leader. So now you're going to be seeing them in a new lens. Understand what their strengths are, understand what their capabilities and talents are, also understand what their gaps are. That will be as important. It'll be valuable for you to get to know each person's, personal working style. You have yours as a team manager, you have yours as a professional, but everyone's got a little bit of a different working style. We have that because of how we're built, what our characteristics are about, our personalities. Some of us are introverted. Some of us are strong extroverts. And then a lot of us live in the middle of that continuum. So understand how people like to work and their styles. That also is important, as you observe early on in your new manager role. And then determine what the communication protocol should be and the best ways for you to communicate with your team members, to communicate with others, as well as those outside of your group. What are the most effective ways in getting things done? And we'll come back to just the overall topic of communication in just a moment. All right. So as you shift your thinking and behavior, I want you also to keep in mind that moving from an individual or an individual contributor role to a management position, it's not just a step up on the corporate ladder or whatever ladder you're in for whatever your respective organization is. It's really an altogether new ladder, all right, because of management. So that means learning more about what motivates your team, what their skills are, expanding your perspective, really understanding the full scope of your responsibilities. What that means is making sure you're clear on expectations from your boss and how you make impact to an organization. That's the new ladder that you're on. So as exciting as it is, you want to keep in mind too that, again, as a new manager, you need to lead by example and inspire your team. And again, be there to motivate them. Be one that's communicating and sometimes over communicating, critical information in a clear and timely way. All right. Again, because business goes at a quick pace, and again, irrespective of size of company or the type of organization, nonprofit or others, business changes quickly, new decisions are made. And so as you respond to things, your job is to also make sure others are informed and to bring other, needs and ideas into your conversations with your team. All right. You want to motivate others to work effectively, not just as the team, but also to harness their individual talents as well. So being a leader that motivates and inspires is important. All right. And then as is, really demonstrating the ability to get along with others and be effective with people at all levels in an organization. Being effective is about emotional intelligence, and that is you understanding and being really tuned into your self-awareness and your social awareness, a really valuable and important management concept and something that can really harness your career and really help it to, lift off. It can also be something that really gets in the way and can derail your career. So emotional intelligence, getting along with others, building goodwill with them, using humor to diffuse tough situations where it's appropriate can also be things that you call upon in your everyday situations as managing. And then remember, again, part of your job, a big part is both managing and coaching junior team members or those that you have as direct reports, really all in an aim to have team success. And recognizing that now it's not your individual success that matters anymore, but what your group's objectives, what your goals are, and working effectively together against all of those goals, and then celebrating it when the time is right. Let's move on and talk about leadership briefly as well. And what leadership is about in the context of managing. I'll share with you a model in just a moment or two. Leadership really is about your ability to motivate, lead, inspire, and partner with the people that you work with. They might be your direct reports. Of course, they probably are day to day. They could be people from other departments, other peers. They could be people outside of your company. Many of you work with a lot of vendors that are really important and play a critical role in helping you to get things done week to week. So keep in mind, some of your leadership goes externally as well as internally. You may be a new manager with a team that you served on as an individual contributor. You might be a new manager for an altogether different group. You might be inheriting people that you just don't even know. And again, you need to start building relationships with them. In either case, as you begin your management path, it's important for you to just really know what you're walking into. What is the situation of the group? What's the situation of the department? What are you trying to accomplish in first quarter of 2019? What are the broader goals organizationally for the rest of 2019? What have you heard from your boss? As a new manager, that's the perspective I'm talking about, of getting your mind around more and bigger and different things than you did as an individual contributor. In the long run, more will be expected of you from above and below you. So that's why it is important to really get a good sense and scope of everything. Okay. This is the framework that I wanted to share with you, the Situational Leadership from Ken Blanchard. And an established leadership expert. He wrote the book on situational leadership. People at all levels in an organization practice it today. And for those of you unfamiliar with it, I'm glad to just share briefly about what the 4 parts of this situational model is all about. It includes the options for you to call upon one of these 4 methods as you manage and work with your direct reports day to day. all right? And with your team more holistically. In the directing method, you as manager really make decisions for the group, all right? You are directing whatever those decisions are, sharing them with the team, and advancing the work as required, as needed. In the coaching method, decisions still largely reside with team leader, with the manager, but there is more collaboration. There is getting others on the team, your direct reports, to have a voice, to weigh in, to talk about things, even though manager still determines the course of action and what the decision will be. In the supporting method, this is where a manager, kind of steps back a little bit. They remain involved, but they really do allow much more collaboration, ideas for decisions to come from their direct reports. And the manager then serves in more of a supporting role, talks through things, problem solves things, but lets the decisions organically come from direct reports. And then the delegating method is one whereby, you really as manager are the least involved in making decisions. You are delegating, you are handing over tasks, projects, assignments, you're letting people own those things. And again, they have the opportunity also to use, some of these methods to work with you as they progress with their projects. So that is an overview of Blanchard's situational leadership. Let me share a few stories briefly on applying the situational leadership method, and so you can just see how this has lived with others. The first story is one about a wonderful female engineer that I coached some time ago. She was part of a team of 5, and it's an interesting story about once her boss was promoted, she in turn stepped into his role. And she was very excited about that. It was a deserving promotion. She was ready for it. But what she found in her new role as manager in her first couple of months was some challenges with one of her team members, one of her new direct reports, who was a peer, who is also a friend. And now that person was really kind of resisting her management and her leadership of the team. Really a difficult situation for her early in her new management experience. She called upon the delegating and the directing leadership methods from Blanchard to, try and work as effectively as she could with her new team, and especially with this person who was resisting some of her leadership. She was doing more directing to, again, show her management, her knowledge, her expertise. She also allowed this person, to take ownership of some projects as well. In our second story, this is one that is about a person who was working for one financial services firm, moved over to another in a business development role, a pretty seasoned professional. He was charged in leading a whole new group of people. That he was inheriting in his new company. 3 very established, seasoned people who had been at his new firm 10, 15 or 10 or 15 years or longer. And, this was going to be, and he was significantly younger than this group too. That was another important factor. He used the directing method quite a bit because he was also redirecting the group. They were taking on some new work in a new part of financial services. And so there was a lot of important guidance and directing the person needed to do. He also needed to coach them along the way on what that was all about. And so they were in kind of a learning position as well. So that's a second example. Then the third one is another lovely woman that I coached in my work at Kellogg, who was running a small team at a nonprofit here in Illinois. Worked in the sustainability area, which was really, really interesting work that she loved and was thriving in. She had gotten promoted and was excited to be leading a new small team of 3. What ended up happening, though, was that her organization lost a lot of funding and had to abandon some really important projects. or backburnered them for a period of time. And so that took a lot of wind out of the team sail. That really kind of felt demotivating to people. So what Rose needed to do is really draw upon Blanchard's supporting and coaching methods to keep her team motivated, to keep her team focused on the things that they could do when they really hit kind of a rough patch in their organization. And, within the year, they were back on track to a different place. But the point is, we have to, as managers, draw upon all different circumstances at all different times, each day, each week within our organizations. And I introduced this as a really worthwhile tool to be thinking about, potentially be using maybe even this afternoon for some of you. So shifting to communication, I mentioned that I would come back to this a little bit, and really what I want to share here, kind of top line is that, again, your communication style is really going to be one of the drivers of you as a manager, being effective with your team, advancing your work, and getting things done. And within our organizations today, that there are many, many different tools and ways that we communicate. A lot of companies rely on instant messaging tools and things like that. Others will use a Slack platform. Some companies are really focused on a lot of face-to-face work and being in teams constantly and working that way. And I would just encourage you to think about your group, or again, if you are a new manager or about to be one, what are the most meaningful ways and effective ways you can work with your teams, work with people individually, one-to-one, to get things done, to advance work, to meet your objectives for the week, for the month, for the quarter. And as much as this seems like maybe some real practical and obvious ideas, communication is where things get mucked up in a lot of the work that we do. Not keeping people informed, not communicating as well as we could, not communicating in a timely way, thinking that somebody heard the same thing we did in a meeting. Again, as manager, do your best to just make sure your people are really clear on what what they need to be doing and where things are headed. All right. Pause for a quick water break. I mentioned earlier, too, that the skills and the competencies, how you developed as an individual contributor in the work that you've done in your career so far, whether you've been at it for 3 years or 13 years, whatever those things are, as a new manager, you are really expanding your skill set and your competencies. As an individual contributor, you did things, to develop your planning skills, prioritization, organization, project management skills, of course, communicating. Maybe you developed and delivered presentations. As a manager, however, you're doing much, much more. And you're getting into things like, more deeper problem solving. You're providing feedback to your direct reports, maybe to others outside the company. You're collaborating in bigger ways. You've got to develop more critical thinking when you have to make tougher decisions. So as you progress as a new manager, your growth and professional development also progresses. These are some of the topics that will be important. These are some of the skills that will be vital for you as you, again, progress and grow in new ways as a first-time manager. All right. I mentioned also that I would touch on this topic of managing virtually. As a manager, it's challenging enough to work with people in front of us day to day, but it's equally challenging, to be really, really thoughtful and mindful of people that are 1,000 miles away or further, or just working in a virtual organization. So managing virtually comes with its own challenges. I want to help you be a little bit more effective in that area as well, and share a few tips to enhance your effectiveness with the people that work with and for you in your team. The first point I want to make is that make them feel part of the team, even if they're 1,000 miles away. You as a manager can do that. I talked to a lovely woman recently who I'm coaching, who is based on the East Coast, and her team sits in Chicago. And I asked her what she was doing. She inherited a team in December. I asked her what she was doing to get to know them, to keep connected to them, to be effective with them, to help them to feel very much part of what they're doing, and what she's doing back on the East Coast to progress a lot of their work. And she told me a lot about that. So make them feel part of the team is one of the first tips. Second one is make sure that you are having essential conversations with people whose work you are impacting. If you've got people scattered around the country or the state or globally who have responsibilities for big parts of projects, and you are not making them aware of changes and new updates and quick shifts and things like that, that's really not helping them. Okay, so again, ensure that they are part of essential conversations. Ensure that they are part of essential decisions that affect their work. That is equally important. And the third point that I want to make about managing virtually is just don't be making all the decisions for people. Again, this is where you as a manager can end up really being in a place of an island, because you're doing everything and your direct reports are scattered in other places. If you do that, pretty soon people are going to feel more and more isolated and that they're not part of something. The bottom line, I think, to managing virtually is really doing a great job of communicating, and oftentimes over communicating. And I'll just share with you briefly, when I was working for one of my agency, I was working for a group in Chicago. Our team was about 30 people, and there were two of us based in Phoenix near our client. And I had a 4-year retreat in the desert, which I loved. And I lived in my client's office constantly. But in that experience, I never felt more part of a high-performing, really effective team. And that's because I was in constant communication with my manager, but the 4 direct reports that I had back in Chicago were all over me. I was 2 hours behind them, and they were sending me communications. They were, emailing updates that happened overnight. They, because they were ahead of me in Central Time. They had a lot of, new news. I had new news for them when they woke up and, from the night before. And we just had a really, really good rhythm. So I would encourage you to foster that same kind of thing, that it doesn't matter. I was 2,000 miles away from my team, and I felt very, very much part of things. And I had a really great professional experience with that. So let's talk about this other topic. Managing versus coaching. And I mentioned that this is, again, not synonymous. These two words, managing and coaching, there is a major distinction. All right. And here it is. If managing is overseeing the work of others, coaching is the support managers provide to your individual team members. All right. As a manager, you're overseeing the work of others. You're overseeing the collective work of your group. What needs to get done today, this week, this quarter, in 2019, and you're driving against that, all right? Coaching is the support you give day in and day out, week to week, to all the people that work with you and that are your direct reports. It's the coaching you give to advance that work, all right? So coaching is a critical piece of professional development. It's partnering with one of your direct reports to develop a critical skill, helping expose them to something new, help them to get unstuck from something. All right, giving them new exposure and new opportunities. And in new responsibilities, again, to help with their growth. So I want you to keep in mind that, one can be a remarkable manager of a team, yet be really a lousy coach to those who make up the team when they don't provide, the coaching support that helps and leads to their professional development and growth. You are charged and will be evaluated on how are you growing people? How are you helping people and collaborating with them to grow in their roles? And then similarly, one can be a great coach, a really thoughtful listener, a wonderful partner to constantly be in listening mode and hearing from their direct reports. But they can be a crummy manager. They can lose sight of what's important, miss deadlines, and miss, really important projects. So again, your job is to do both. You're going to grow into this. This is not automatic. This is not instantaneous. This can develop over many months, even years. But the point is, early on, the awareness of knowing I need to be a good manager to move and advance the work. I need to be a good coach to help my people develop and grow too. That's the difference there. Okay, so get good at both over time. And then a reminder that, again, with that wider scope of responsibility, as a new manager, as a first-time manager, your job is to keep an eye on more. And that is expanded scope of responsibility, keeping your boss happy, managing up, and making sure your direct reports are doing what they need to be doing. And again, that your group is advancing whatever goals and projects and things you're trying to do week to week, month to month. We have to talk to a lot of people, especially in maybe medium-sized to large-sized organizations day to day. And again, this all comes back to communication, and it's why it's such a driver of being effective and being a good manager. Just having this broader mindset of up, down, and across will be really, really vital to your success. Okay. I share with you the warning signs I mentioned earlier about key signs that a manager might be challenged or struggling in some ways. And there's really three categories for that. The first one is about your mindset. And this is about you still being in the mindset of the individual contributor and thinking in terms of I and not we. You've got a team now, even if it's just a team of two, but it's about we and what we do collectively to get things done and advance things. All right, so shifting the mindset from I to we. That also goes to recognition, I mentioned earlier. Sometimes a manager will let a promotion, get the better of them and let it kind of go to their ego, let it go to their head and think, wow, I'm in a management position now. I got a lot of authority and, I've got all this new responsibility and they tune out to the people that need them most. They're not available. Sometimes they're not even approachable. And I would encourage you to avoid that at all costs. That's not the kind of manager that you want to be. So be thoughtful about that. And then sometimes the new manager with this expanded scope of work also is someone who says yes to everything. Yes to everything your direct reports ask, yes to everything your boss asks, yes to things that other department leaders are asking of you, or your outside vendors or whomever. You're going to drown. And you'll be in the deep end of the ocean really quickly if you do that. Think about what's expected of you and your team first. Think about what your boss is charging you to do, what the 3, 4, 5 major expectations are. Focus on that. If you want to say yes to something but really don't have the bandwidth, negotiate when you do have time to get that you can help someone else get something done. So again, you don't want to be in this position where you have taken on too much and you're in a challenging place too quickly. All right. Be on the lookout. Be thoughtful about warning signs and struggling. Happens to many people. And then some myths that go along with that, really, again, this is not about authority. Where does authority come from? Organizations, really senior leaders. And if you're working with external clients, the authority really, comes from clients often as well. It doesn't really flow from the manager's position. You have incremental responsibility. Sometimes it is substantial, but it's not about authority. It's about managing more responsibilities and being effective at that. Another thing that, point number 3 is something that I think everybody on this call knows. We only control ourselves. We don't control anybody. You direct your direct reports. Again, use Blanchard's methods to guide, coach, direct, delegate. But we don't control people. Everyone comes in as a key contributor every day. If they're not, that's a different conversation to have. But we don't control as managers. It's important to focus on developing individual relationships with each person on your team. I mentioned that earlier in that when you were at the center of that square in an earlier slide. But this doesn't remain the focus ongoing. Understand your the direct reports, understand their skills, their strengths, their gaps, what they're not good at, understand how they complement each other and you. But again, it's not the focus where you're just working on developing the relationship, forever and you lose sight of time again there. And then the other myth that the manager's job is to ensure things run smoothly. We all know, I shouldn't say we both, but we all know that, every day there are hiccups, things go sideways, things get derailed, projects go off track, off budget, new decisions are made, something you could be working on for weeks gets, kind of upended and backburnered. Your job is to, keep the work running as smoothly as possible, knowing full well smooth is not really the adjective each week. You want to be effective with work. You want to problem solve in the moment. You want to find solutions when things become challenging, and help your team members and others in your organization, to get things back on track. Or to get things in a new direction and on a new path. And as smoothly as we all can do our work, great, but we all know a lot of a manager's work is all about problem solving all day long. So those are some myths. This point on managing friends is one I bring up again because, it's really not uncommon for young, for professionals today, especially the millennial generation, 85 million strong, to develop a lot of their personal life, friendships with people they work with side by side each day. And it often can start from your onboarding and your early work experiences. But I want to take you back to that female engineer and that story I shared with you about, the challenges she experienced. You're working with a group, you're all friends, you all have nice social time together, social hour, or whatever, every Friday or whatever you're doing, and even more social beyond that. But when one person gets promoted, the dynamic changes significantly. There can be resentment, there can be resistance, there can be, excitement from your peers that you were the one that was selected. But human nature and what I've experienced and what I've observed in over 30 years in the marketplace and in an industry is that sometimes there's some challenges here. Be thoughtful about the people you make friends with at work. Be thoughtful and understand where boundaries are in terms of oversharing and getting too personal with people. Sometimes that can also come back to work against you. The last thing you want to do as a manager is be providing any preferential treatment to any friends that you may be, directing and managing. Are you giving a friend a pass on a missed deadline when you'd hold other people accountable in a different way? Are the friends on the team getting the really great assignments and the plum projects? Or are you being judicious and really being a thoughtful manager and delegating, to everyone, sharing? All right. So managing friends can come with, it can be great in some organizations. My experience is what I've observed, what I hear from people who are in these roles are that it can come with challenges. So be on the lookout. That's all. As we wrap up some of our core content, I want to share, this main slide that kind of encapsulates a lot of what I shared with you earlier, and I call it the Manager's Foundational Toolkit. It includes really these 5 points about you as manager, thinking about what needs to get done, what are the new projects, making sure you have the resources to complete the work, providing and coaching and delegating and directing your team members with that important support. Be a helpful problem solver, be a helpful collaborator. When problems arise, when stuff surfaces, when things go sideways, because they often do. And then, of course, building relationships with your direct reports, your boss's boss, many people with whom you work, and whatever your ecosystem is all about. All right. You're building relationships, setting clear expectations for your direct reports, being a thoughtful and clear communicator, sometimes an over communicator. That, I believe, will help lead to your team's success and you as an early first-time manager. All right. As I prepared our presentation today, I also asked Maggie Chan-Jones about her perspective. She's had such a fascinating career in technology, in that industry as a marketing expert and a marketing leader to the chief marketing officer role. And so I asked her to weigh in and give us her perspective about what she looks like, what she looks for in a first-time manager and kinds of people she promoted. First and foremost thing that she talked about was really there has to be a need for a management position. So as anxious as some of you on the call today might be and feeling a very readiness that you're ready for more, look around your organizations. Can the business support evolving people to management roles, higher salaries, and more opportunities that way? So is the business ready? That was point one. And then the second point was about the candidates' capabilities, and that is skills, competencies, their strengths. Do they have what it takes to lead and manage in a particular area? Have they shown a certain amount of expertise in another part of the company or within the team that Maggie was leading? Are they ready for that, and have they demonstrated that? Oftentimes, transferable skills are very meaningful to advancing the management, so keep that in mind. And then finally, do they have the fit and the drive? Are they self-motivated? Are they ready to lead? Are they excited about leading? Have they shown those skills? Have they been able to be strategic in their thinking and have a vision and then go execute and prove that out and show that they may be ready then? All right. Then Maggie also mentioned this really interesting point about those who already have followers, around them, their peers, people who speak highly about someone. Any of you on the call today who are your fans and followers, people talk within organizations, and that information too can be collected and observed by managers who are about to promote people. So do you have followers? So build some followers, build some relationships with all the people that you work with. All right. Again, we're going to be sharing this presentation with all of you, and it will be available in a recording. All of the resources that you see here are all available online. You can Google Talent Smart, which is Dr. Travis Bradbury's global consulting firm about emotional intelligence. This is one of the primary topics that is going to ensure your success in the future. I don't care what level you get to in an organization. I also like Business Insiders. You can sign up for their newsletter online and receive that periodically. If you are a new manager and your company can't afford to send you to anything in point 6, getting the book by Barry Silverstein is one of the best things that you can do. It's a fantastic tool, Secrets to Leading for New Managers. It's an excellent book, and I've recommended it for many years. Then for some who are managing, new hires coming out of undergrad, if you're getting challenged by some new younger professionals, Not Everyone Gets a Trophy is a favorite book. And Dan Schwabel does a great job just talking about millennial careers, and he's an expert in that area. He's got a lot of wonderful online, blogs, newsletters, and things like that. Great insights to learn more from. And then if you haven't been familiar with the American Management Association, this is a wonderful organization that has offices and learning centers in, let's call it, the top 20 markets in the United States. There's all sorts of new training, management skills for new managers, making the transition. These are short courses, 2 and 3 days in length, and they're really quite valuable. And cost a couple $1,000s, maybe companies will pay, can be very valuable. And if not this year, maybe at another time. But again, I wanted to share some resources for you to help you to learn more when it's available to you, when you've got some time to dig in further. All right. So I've talked for probably a good 45 minutes or so, and I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to have a chat and hear about some of your questions at this point. I share a few questions here. What are you most curious about? What are you concerned about? I'd like to take your questions and have a conversation.
Great. Thank you so much, Mary, for that helpful information. I know I found it really useful, and we have some great questions already coming in. So the first one comes from Tiffany, and she has a question about how do you create a sense of transparency without oversharing?
Don't overshare, Tiffany. I know I know that was easy. You as a new manager will, again, you'll have insights to more information from your boss. Your boss will start sharing more than he did before. Your job is to use discretion, good judgment. Again, another skill that you developed as an individual contributor over the time of your, work tenure so far. You have to use judgment. Some information is super sensitive. If anyone on the call is working within the human resource management domain, most of everything you touch is sensitive, is confidential. You have to be really, really careful about that. If there is information, Tiffany, that it might be challenging for some members of the team, I would use that as a guideline to say this is not appropriate information. Now, if it is something that directly affects their work, that's a different kind of conversation that you should have. But I would encourage you to just use your judgment, be thoughtful about the impact of what the topic is. Again, highly sensitive or confidential information, I would err on the side of not sharing. If it is something that affects the work of your team, use your manager for a guide too on, I was thinking of sharing this with my team. What do you think, John or Susan, whatever your boss's name is? That might be a good guide. Thanks for your question.
Great. So the next two questions I think we can kind of combine as one. So we have someone who would like to know about managing someone who is somewhat timid and trying to work with them on encouraging them to speak up and learning to say no. Conversely, what advice do you have on someone who's taking on management who might be an introvert or is naturally shy?
Yeah. I'm going to take the second one first, Mary, if you don't mind. Wonderful questions. For any of us on the more introverted end as managers, I want you to think about watching a TED Talk from Susan Cain on her wonderful book called Quiet. And she, in 18 minutes, will tell you and convince you, you might not need the convincing, that introverted people have as much creative horsepower, as much creative strength, ideation, brainstorming, and other things, and great ideas to be managing and leading people, projects, teams, budgets, and all of it. Susan Cain is fantastic. So her TED Talk, available online, YouTube. Her book, Quiet, even better yet. And let me go back to the first question about the employee who was a little bit timid. I would, as a manager, I would look to that person and figure out one or two things for that person to work on. If there are a couple of important skills about the work he or she is doing that they need to be developing and growing, as coach, I'm going to help them. I'm going to use my coaching efforts to help them with that, okay? And help them to gain in some of their confidence. The better we get at things, the more we develop. Skills are things that we develop by more practice. The more we do it, the better we get at it, the more our confidence grows. Focus on small steps with the person. One or two items, again, of skills, of things that he's working on or she might be working on with the projects, the tasks or whatever. Focus on that. And again, with the idea of timid comes they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to come forward. You as manager want to encourage to all of your direct reports, holding back from speaking up only will kind of get things a little sideways or make things harder, maybe for the group or for the person. All right. So encourage people to speak up. If they don't want to do it in the group, do it one-on-one with you. Be a manager who encourages the proverbial open door. I'm ready to talk when you are. Don't be afraid to come forward. It's better for you to come forward than to figure something out that might be the wrong path, or to just hold it in because you're too timid or shy. Take small steps with that person, but identify what those things are.
Great. So we are right at 1:30, but let's try and squeeze one more quick question in. So what advice do you have for people who are managing direct reports who have more content knowledge and institutional memory than you do?
Yeah, and so that's really a great question. That might be a lot of people on the call. That leads, and I hear about this almost every week. That leads the manager to make all the decisions and not bring people in. Because you've been in the organization for 5 years and your direct reports are there for a year, you're drawing upon all of that great knowledge. You're drawing upon all of that great experience that you've had previously within your industry, within your company. Your job as manager is to start sharing. Your job as manager is to start educating. Bring people into situations when, again, you're bringing that institutional knowledge forward, but help the people on your team to understand where it's relevant and why. What you don't want to do is get in the trap of, I know the answer, I know what to do, I'll make the call for everybody, and then they don't get the benefit of learning and growing, again, within the industry or within your individual organizations. Part of your job as manager, allow them to grow, learn, develop. One of a critical skill is teaching skills. Can you teach someone some new things? Maybe there's a team meeting once a quarter where you do some of that institutional sharing. Be a great way to help them grow and learn about it, and let them start to, you can start to rely on them as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mary. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of your great questions. There are some really great ones, but we'll be sending you out the recording of this webinar as well as some other follow-up information. Please feel free to connect with me in the Fairy God Boss community when you create your profile. And please be in touch with any other questions. Thank you again, and thank you to Mary and Tinshay for partnering with us on this very informative webinar. And
Mary, if I could make one last point myself. Again, if there is a question that I couldn't answer just because of time constraints, I share my email here with you, just so that you know that I'm glad to be available. I look forward to the 2 lucky winners and coaching you briefly on some assistance. So Mary, I look forward to whoever that might be. And then know that Tenchi's got a wonderful Grow program with a few short coaching sessions that might introduce many of you to the whole concept of coaching and how coaching can be such a valuable partner in your career development.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all again. We really appreciate it, and have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.